Technology as we know it is in a perpetual state of improvement, and phones are no exception. You know, I remember back in 2013 when the Samsung Galaxy Note 3 was released, and it was the first phone to record videos up to 4K at 30 FPS, with a time limit of course. Back then that was a massive achievement, but it was still no match for what dedicated cameras had to offer. Fast forward to our current year, 2021, and we have phones such as the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra, which are capable of recording up to 8K at 24 FPS. And this had me wondering, how good is a modern top-end smartphone versus a dedicated mirrorless camera from 2014? For instance, the Panasonic Lumix GH4, which came out around 2014, was a beast given its price. It was the camera for amateur filmmakers, and it's still a great choice for a bit of amateur or pro work, and nowadays you can have it for as low as $500. So my question here really is it worth it to spend less on a phone and some of my budget on a camera, or just invest all of my lump of cash in a better phone? So hello there guys, I'm Vic here from PhoneArena, when I'll try and answer most of my and your questions on the topic at hand. So let's just get into it. Starting with what we know, the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra was released this January 2021, and it has a starting price of $1,200, which, while higher than the GH4, does also defend itself with the fact that besides a camera, is also a phone, the S21 Ultra. So there are two possible things that might pop up in your head right now. A, the phone is no match for this dedicated camera, or B, it's a worthy opponent to it. So I went to take a couple of shots of buildings, and both devices fared nicely, but I just want to pause here for a second, see if you notice which photo is from which camera, or device in this case. And I'm just going to give you a few seconds, switching now to the next photo. For some of you it might be easy, but for the untrained eye it's a bit hard to say. I mean, I can, guess correctly because I took the shots, but let me know what you think down in the comments below, which one you chose and which you didn't, and why. And now for the reveal. And there we go. So if by any chance, without going too much into details, the revealing factor here is the saturation in the sky, where the S21 Ultra kind of makes the blue more blue, if you know what I mean. And that's also for every other color. And furthermore, on the second photo, you'll notice I actually used portrait mode, and you can see the background blur seems to be a bit unnatural on the S21 Ultra, where if you zoom in, you can see just a few spots that were not cut out properly, while on the GH4, of course, it's pretty much natural since it has a bigger sensor and bigger lens, so that's not something that is computed. But still, it's quite impressive on the S21 Ultra what exactly you can do with a small camera. And I'm going to give the colors, a pass, since that's easily something you can correct in post. So moving on, I went and took a quick photo of a nearby cathedral, and it turned out rather good, but a bit over sharpened on the Ultra. If you zoom in, you see clearly how the cement between the bricks kind of looks artificial. Otherwise, a good photo though, from both of these two devices, just a tad bit over sharpened in the S21 Ultra. But if I were to upload these two photos online, due to compression, you'd probably hardly notice the difference, and overall I can really tell you that the S21 Ultra is doing really good given what it is. Additionally, this Samsung device, like many other phones, is capable of ultra-wide photos, which tend to look really nice if you're into that. You can technically achieve the same thing with the GH4, but you'd need to spend a good sum on a quality lens. So I tried my best with what I have. The lens mounted in the GH4 is not exactly narrow, but it's still interesting to see what a massive difference you can get. Quality-wise, the ultra-wide is not exactly something I'd lean onto all the time, since it's not exactly as sharp as the main sensor, as you can see right here. If you just zoom in, you can technically see that, while it is quite amazing, don't get me wrong, it's still not exactly as sharp as the main sensor. Otherwise, on the S21 Ultra, compared to any other device I've tested so far, you can actually even focus, and it's a really good ultra-wide camera. But something to keep in mind. Whereas on the GH4 you can get the full quality you get from the main sensor, so long as you have that nice lens. And good quality lens actually cost quite a lot, so do bear in mind on that one. So without sidetracking too much, let's move on to maybe a portrait shot then? Like literally? Yeah, well, I have to hand it to the phone. It may not be perfect just yet, but I am rather well cut out, and from the background. One caveat though is that the depth is not exactly natural. And additionally, the quality of the image seems to be lower if you zoom in a bit and check it out. It is impressive. I mean, all of this blur has been made possible by computational photography, but still, you can kind of see how the quality drops, and it drops significantly, not just a tiny bit where you won't notice it too much, so bear in mind on that one. Perhaps this feature may take a couple of years more to improve, but it's kind of interesting to see what will happen with it. For the time being though, it's pretty usable and pretty nice. Since that last was a bust for the S21 Ultra, I moved on to do a couple of zoom photos, and this was quite interesting. The phone had a rather impressive 100 times zoom. Now it's not like you can't achieve the same result with a dedicated camera. That would be a rather cumbersome task. You actually have to lug around a big lens, like quite a massive one. The one I currently had mounted to the GH4, and the only one I have, which is, you know, rather long, did an about 80mm shot maximum. So one additional thing though to consider about the S21 Ultra is its 100 times zoom, while being quite impressive for the size of the camera, is not exactly the sharpest, and the small form factor of the Ultra makes it rather hard to be stable. You know, sure, Samsung did introduce software, which helps additionally by locking onto a distant object and helping you track it, but you know, at that point it still wasn't perfect, and honestly you'd need to carry a tripod in order to achieve a stable shot, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a portable device. So how about some night photography then? Well, this one was also really interesting to me. The GH4 I have with me is certainly not the best when it comes to taking photos at night time, since it has a lot of noise at high ISO. But given that the Ultra has a rather small sensor, I was assuming that it would do, you know, not that better than the S21 Ultra itself. Let's move on to my first pics, which were done at 3200 ISO, by the way. So this one was interesting because the S21 Ultra actually fared, as expected, worse in terms of noise, but it managed to squeeze more light in the image. And this was at pretty much the closest settings I can get, 1/25th of a second or 1/20th of a second for the phone, and 3200 ISO for both at the maximum open aperture for both. But one additional thing I want to mention in favor for the phone is that the Ultra is also capable of doing computational photography based night shot. And I have to admit, the picture I took with this mode came out the brightest I could ever achieve while holding both of these cameras in hand. If you just look at it, you can see that the night mode on the phone managed to squeeze a very well lit photo, while still retaining most of the details of the photo, while you know, you're limited to the GH4 being able to do a normal shot. Of course, you can do long exposure photography with both of these cameras. Furthermore, for just social media, this is actually really comfy and easy to use. I'm gonna give this one to the S21 Ultra. In terms of video, if you're not too heavy into videography or cinematography, you can get away with a phone. Yes, an expensive phone, but that's still impressive. I mean, picture this. A small device in your pocket that can record reasonably good, decent videos for amateur productions. What's even more interesting is that high-end Samsung devices also offer a pro video mode, which is quite impressive if you ask me. But if you're not convinced, here's an example of a good lit sunny day. It looks pretty good if you ask me. Both are doing 4K at 30 FPS, which is where the GH4 taps out. Otherwise, you may go up to 4K 60 FPS on the Ultra. 8K is also an option, but I think the quality is not there yet and is more like a gimmick, so for now stay away from it. Now, both devices looked sharp in the light, but I just couldn't help but notice how noise in the shadows creeps when recording with the S21 Ultra. And this kind of disappointed me a bit because I was expecting a better performance. HDR-wise, both are doing a fantastic job of exposing the dark and light scenes properly, but the Ultra is still coming in a bit more saturated color-wise, you know, with a bit more contrast. Nothing major, but still good to note. One other thing I just remembered is that the GH4 has a good trick up its sleeve. It has the ability to switch the video bitrate. The benefit for the GH4, as I mentioned, since you can choose a bitrate, I can adjust how much information I want to preserve in the video itself so as to be able to edit it later without losing much detail, and I can, you know, do the opposite. I can lower the bitrate in order to make my video smaller and easier to share online, which is pretty cool. So as a conclusion then, I found the following. Both devices did a very good job capturing the scene, quite impressive for the S21 Ultra given its size, but the Lumix did an overall better job, and this is a camera which is 7 years old, and so I can't really speak for a brand new camera if it actually did this comparison. So I guess you get the point. It comes down to needs and preferences. If you're somebody who actually just wants to take a quick photo or two from time to time, just get a phone, get a good phone with a good camera. Then the opposite is true. If you want to do something more professional, cameras are still the way to go. So that was pretty much it from me. If you want to see more additional content like this, please subscribe, guys. And if I missed anything, please comment down below. And this has been fun. I'm Vic once again from PhoneArena, tuning out.